Welcome back to the Bechange Center for Autism podcast for another deep dive.
Always great to be here.
Today we're going to be talking about intervention, specifically how and when it can make a real difference for people with autism.
Yeah.
Now, we always talk about how important early intervention is, and don't get me wrong, it's super important.
Right.
But what we really want to highlight today is that it's never too late to start, no matter how old the individual is.
That's a really great point. It's a question that we get all the time at Bechange, especially from parents.
Right.
When is the right time to start? And honestly, like you said, the sooner the better. But even if a child is diagnosed later, there's so much we can do to help them succeed.
So much we can do. So let's unpack this idea that sooner is better a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, we all know that so much development is happening in the brain in those first few years of life.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Those first 3 years are so crucial. And like we call that period of rapid development brain plasticity.
I've heard that term.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of it?
I have.
Okay. So just for our listeners, think of the brain as a superhighway under construction.
Right.
And those early years are all about paving those neural pathways and making connections that are essential for learning and development. So that's why therapies like ABA are so impactful in early childhood. We're able to get in there and really shape those pathways.
Wow. That's a great analogy.
Thank you.
So it sounds like by intervening early, we're essentially helping build those roads.
Yeah,
In a way that supports the child's specific needs.
exactly.
That's powerful stuff.
It is.
So tell me more about how ABA therapy works in this context.
Sure. One of the core principles of ABA is that behaviors are learned and they can be changed.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So by understanding the why behind a behavior, we can use techniques like prompting and reinforcement to shape those behaviors in a positive direction.
Okay, I think that's going to be really helpful for some of our listeners who may not be super familiar with ABA. Can you break down those two terms, prompting and reinforcement, a little bit more?
Sure.
Like, what do you mean by those terms?
Okay, so prompting is basically providing assistance to help the child learn a new skill or behavior.
So like a little nudge in the right direction.
Yeah, exactly. Think of it like a gentle nudge in the right direction. It can be anything. It could be a verbal prompt, a visual cue. You could even physically guide the child's hand.
I imagine the type of prompt really depends on the individual child and the skill they're learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to tailor the approach to each child's unique needs and strengths. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach.
We always say that at Bechange. Individualized support.
Exactly.
Okay, so tell me about reinforcement.
So reinforcement comes into play after the child exhibits the desired behavior. It's basically giving them a reward
That's right.
or something positive to make them more likely to do that behavior again. So it's all about reinforcing those positive actions.
So I'm starting to see how this all connects. So let's say a child is learning to communicate using picture cards.
Okay.
Would we maybe use a verbal prompt like show me the apple, and then when they do it correctly, we reinforce their success with praise or, I don't know, maybe a small preferred toy or something.
Got it.
Perfect.
Exactly. And the great thing about ABA is that it can be incorporated into everyday routines.
Oh, I love that.
So it doesn't have to be this separate formal thing. It can be woven into daily life.
Right.
So we work really closely with families to create individualized treatment plans and empower them to use these techniques at home,
I love that.
making learning a natural part of their child's world.
I've seen firsthand how empowering that can be for parents. You know, they really feel like they have the tools to support their child's development at home.
It's huge.
But what about those families who don't receive a diagnosis right away?
Okay.
You know, they receive a diagnosis after that initial 3-year window.
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's where it gets interesting. So it's true that early intervention harnesses that amazing brain plasticity we were talking about.
Right.
But that doesn't mean progress stops after age 3.
So you're saying we can still see growth even if we miss that window?
Absolutely. We see incredible growth and development happening throughout childhood and even beyond. It's never too late to learn and make progress.
So would you say that the focus of therapy shifts a bit as a child gets older?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
How so?
Well, between the ages of 3 and 6, children are entering preschool and early elementary school.
Right. Big changes.
Big changes.
Yeah.
So naturally, we start focusing more on social skills,
Okay.
communication, and pre-academic skills to help them thrive in those new environments.
I can imagine social skills become especially important during that time.
Totally.
Can you give an example of how you might work on social skills with a child in that age group?
Yeah, absolutely. One common approach is using social stories and role playing.
Okay.
So let's say a child is having difficulty sharing toys.
Pretty typical.
Right. It's common. So we might create a social story with pictures and simple language
Okay.
to walk them through the steps of sharing and the positive feelings that come with sharing.
I love that.
And then we can role play different sharing scenarios, giving the child a chance to practice those skills in a safe and supportive environment.
So you're essentially setting them up for success by breaking down those complex social interactions into manageable steps.
Yeah,
That's fantastic.
exactly. And during this transition to school, we always emphasize collaboration between us, the parents, and the teachers to ensure a smooth and successful experience for the child.
It really does take a village.
It does.
And that support becomes even more crucial as children move into adolescence and adulthood, which we're going to get to in just a minute.
Yes, we are. And that's why we always say it takes a village, right?
It really does.
All hands on deck.
And I imagine that support becomes even more crucial as children move into adolescence and adulthood.
Oh, absolutely, because the challenges change.
Right. So what might ABA therapy look like for teenagers and adults who are diagnosed with autism?
Well, it really depends on the individual and their specific needs
Of course.
at that stage of life. But generally speaking, for teenagers, we might focus on navigating social situations, developing self-advocacy skills, helping them prepare for the transition to work or higher education,
For a lot.
or even managing anxiety and emotional regulation, things like that.
All critically important skills.
They're life skills.
Yeah. Can you share a specific example of how you might work with a teenager, let's say, on something like managing anxiety in social situations?
Sure.
Because that can be really tough for teenagers.
Absolutely. So let's say a teenager is anxious about going to a school dance.
Okay.
That's a common one. We might use a technique called systematic desensitization.
Okay. I've heard of that.
Have you?
Yeah.
So basically, it involves gradually exposing them to the anxiety-provoking situation in a controlled way.
So baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps. So we could start by, showing them pictures of dances,
Okay.
then maybe watching videos of dances, and then maybe visiting the dance hall when it's empty.
Oh, okay.
So building up to it.
Right. So you're kind of creating a hierarchy of steps.
Yes, exactly. A hierarchy of anxiety.
Starting with the least anxiety provoking
Right.
and slowly working your way up to the actual event.
Exactly. And along the way, we're teaching them coping strategies,
Okay. Like what?
like deep breathing exercises, positive self-talk, anything they can use to manage their anxiety in the moment, giving them a toolbox of skills they can use.
That's so powerful.
It is.
What I love about this approach is that you're not just teaching them to avoid or escape the situation,
Right.
but you're giving them the tools to actually confront it head on.
Yeah, with confidence. And that's the power of ABA, right?
Exactly.
We're empowering these individuals to take control of their lives and reach their full potential.
I love that. So those strategies, I'm assuming they're just as relevant for adults who are diagnosed later in life.
Absolutely. Imagine an adult who's recently diagnosed
Okay.
and they're struggling with sensory overload at work.
Oh, I could see how that would be a huge challenge, especially if they've never had those tools to manage it.
Definitely. So how can ABA help in that situation?
Well, we would start by identifying those specific sensory triggers in their work environment.
Okay.
Is it the fluorescent lighting? Is it the sound of the copy machine constantly running? Figure out what it is. And then we can work with them to develop coping mechanisms to deal with those triggers.
So what kind of coping mechanisms might you suggest in that kind of situation?
Well, it could be simple things like, noise-canceling headphones
Oh, yeah.
or a fidget toy.
To help regulate that sensory input.
Exactly. Or we might teach them relaxation techniques,
Okay.
like progressive muscle relaxation to manage stress and sensory overload. Wow. It's remarkable how these targeted interventions can make such a big difference in someone's daily life.
It really is. And that's what we're all about. But it's also important to acknowledge that accessing treatment, getting that help, can be a real challenge for some families.
It's true.
There's often wait lists, insurance issues. Finding qualified professionals can be tough.
Yeah. Those are all very real and valid concerns. What advice would you give to those families who are facing those challenges?
Well, I would say first and foremost, don't give up. Be your child's advocate.
So important.
Reach out to support groups.
Yeah.
There are lots of great organizations out there that can offer resources and guidance.
Right.
Explore different therapy options.
Okay.
Telehealth is a great option these days.
More flexible.
More flexible, exactly.
Early intervention services too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Early intervention programs are specifically designed to support children under 3 who have developmental delays or disabilities. They provide a whole range of services: speech therapy, occupational therapy, even ABA therapy.
Wow, all in one place.
All in one place.
It's amazing. And they come to you, right? Like they come to your home.
They can, yeah. It's all about meeting the family where they're at.
Oh, I love that. So for parents who are, they don't have a diagnosis yet, but they suspect something might be a little different, what are some of those early signs of autism that they should look out for?
That's a great question. And it's important to remember that every child develops at their own pace.
Of course.
But there are some common signs that might warrant further evaluation, like limited eye contact,
Okay.
delayed speech or language, repetitive behaviors like hand flapping or rocking,
Okay.
difficulty with social interaction.
So if a parent is noticing some of those signs, what's the next step?
Talk to your pediatrician. They can assess your concerns and refer you to a specialist if needed.
Makes sense.
Early intervention is key, so don't hesitate to raise any concerns you might have.
Absolutely. And one thing we often see alongside autism is sensory processing difficulties,
Oh, yeah.
which can make it really tough for a child to learn and communicate effectively.
Definitely. And it can manifest in many different ways. Some kids are really sensitive to certain stimuli.
Right.
Some kids are undersensitive. Like for a child who's really sensitive to sounds, those everyday noises in a classroom can be super overwhelming,
Oh, yeah, I can imagine.
distracting, makes it hard to focus.
Makes it really hard to learn and engage with other kids.
Exactly. So how can ABA help? We can help children develop strategies for regulating that sensory input.
Okay.
Help them respond appropriately to different stimuli. For example, we might use sensory breaks throughout the day.
Sensory breaks, what are those?
Just a chance for the child to decompress and regulate their sensory system. Could be a quiet corner with some calming sensory items like a weighted blanket or a soft toy.
Oh,
Or it could be something more structured, like swinging, jumping on a trampoline, playing with Play-Doh.
I see. So you're creating a sensory-friendly environment.
Exactly. And by teaching children how to manage their sensory input, we're helping them feel more comfortable and confident in their environment.
Which then leads to better learning and social interaction.
Exactly. It's all connected.
It's all connected. This has been so fascinating. I can't help but feel excited about the future of autism treatment, especially with all the advancements in technology.
I know. Me too. It's an exciting time.
What are some of the things you're excited about?
Well, things like virtual reality and AI.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
I mean, they're transforming the way we approach treatment. Like, virtual reality programs allow children to practice social skills in these safe, simulated environments.
That's incredible.
And AI-powered apps can provide personalized therapy activities right at home.
So cool. It sounds like technology is making therapy more engaging and accessible for everyone.
Absolutely. And it's creating new opportunities for learning and growth that we never had before. And it's not just technology, there's promising research in early detection
Right.
and intervention, a growing understanding of the genetic and neurological underpinnings of autism.
So much happening in the field.
It's an exciting time to be involved. It really is.
So much happening in the field. It's pretty remarkable.
It really is.
And speaking of exciting developments, I know we're both passionate about the role of parent training programs
Yes,
in supporting families affected by autism.
absolutely. Because, equipping parents with the knowledge and the skills to really support their child's development is just so valuable.
Absolutely.
And these programs really do empower parents to use those ABA strategies at home, so it's creating consistency between what's happening in therapy and what's happening at home, reinforcing those skills.
I love that emphasis on empowering parents
Yeah,
because it really is a team effort.
it is.
It's not just about the child receiving therapy, it's about creating that supportive and nurturing environment at home
Right.
so they can thrive. So, what are some of the key benefits you've seen from these parent training programs?
Well, we see parents who report feeling more confident in their ability to manage those, sometimes challenging behaviors and just communicate more effectively with their child.
Right.
And creating that structured and predictable home environment. And that all translates to positive outcomes for the child.
So it's a win-win for everyone.
Exactly.
Now, before we wrap up today's deep dive, I think it's so important to reiterate that it's never too late to start.
Absolutely.
While early intervention has all those amazing benefits,
Huge.
every age presents new opportunities for growth and learning and connection.
Yeah, I mean, the brain might not be quite as adaptable as we get older, but targeted interventions can still lead to significant, profound improvements in communication, in social skills, quality of life.
I love that, and I think it's such an important message of hope for families who are just, starting this journey a little bit later in their child's life, or even for adults who have been recently diagnosed.
Absolutely.
It's never too late to reach out for support, to find those resources,
Yeah.
to empower yourself with knowledge.
Couldn't agree more. And it's really about taking that first step. Whether your child is a toddler or a teenager or even an adult, seeking help, exploring those options, it can make such a difference. So as we wrap up this deep dive on the Bechange Center for Autism podcast, I want to leave our listeners with a question. How can we, as a community, better support individuals with autism and their families throughout their lives?
That is a powerful question, one that deserves ongoing conversation and action. I think we all have a role to play in creating a more inclusive and supportive world
Absolutely.
for individuals with autism.
Yeah,
And it starts with awareness,
for sure.
understanding, and acceptance. It's about celebrating neurodiversity and recognizing those unique strengths and contributions
I love that.
that individuals with autism bring to the table. And it's about advocating for access to resources and support services and opportunities that allow these individuals to thrive in all aspects of life.
Beautifully said.
Thank you. We need to move beyond awareness into action. Really create a world where every individual with autism feels seen and heard and valued for exactly who they are.
Well said. Thank you so much for having me today. This has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. These insights have been so valuable, and I hope our listeners feel empowered and inspired to take action.
Me too.
And as always, we encourage you to reach out to us at the Bechange Center for Autism. If you have any questions, if you need some guidance, we are here to support you every step of the way.
Every step of the way.
Thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thanks for listening.